What happened? What went wrong?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Actually, one thing. Don't ever question me again. Ever.
What?
I give you an order, you take it. You don't ask why. Those 10 seconds on the phone could have blown the op.
The op was bringing Schmidt across.
The op was setting up Ann Cathcart, and your end had to look legit.
Where you want it?
Bay 12, please.
I'm doing this? I'm doing this? I'm making the car move with the power of my mind? Yes! No. Wait!
When's the last time you had a chest x-ray? You know about secondary smoke? You can give people lung cancer who are innocent and trying to live healthy lives.
He's been looking at us. I've had this sense.
I always feel like somebody's watching me.
Yeah, it can't be them.
Oh.
No, sorry.
Oh, so I'm Mark.
I'm Tom.
And we're the
Cinemaniacs.
Back on the scene.
Yep. No, we don't have to like take big, huge, deep breaths and just kind of go crazy because it's not a nutsy. Primarily because there've only been like one new movie each weekend.
It's been
at the theaters.
A light load
Yeah.
for us lately. So this is a catch-up show. Heinz 57, if you will, my personal preference.
Yes.
Not that I'm endorsing a product or
No,
anything.
certainly not.
So how you been?
I've been okay. Seen lots of movies.
Have you now?
I have.
Any that we're going to be talking about today?
Probably not, but...
Oh, well, I guess I'll carry the load. So while we're here,
We
while
might
the
as
lights
well.
are on, while they've shown up, we might as
Yep.
well. First up in theaters is... Oh, the looks you get when you ask for a ticket for this one. So Johnny Knoxville and the Jackass gang, the gang that brought you such memorable films as the Jackass films, comes back with something a little bit different. This trailer probably will do a better job than me at explaining it. This is Jackass Presents Bad Grandpa. This exists for no other reason than you can have the series of bad films on a video store shelf.
Yes,
Like, you know, Bad Teacher, Bad Santa, Bad Grandpa, Bad Religion, Bad Company.
Yes.
Anyway, so you know, don't take a kid to this.
No, certainly not.
Rated R for everything under the sun.
Well, I kind of expected this from the Mercury Theater of the 21st century.
Exactly. So basically, this is an odd duck. The best way I can describe this is if you've seen Borat. This is similar to that in that you have two people playing characters. Johnny Knoxville has in very effective age makeup.
Yeah, I'll agree with
as
that.
the 80-something
and
year
he
old
did a
man.
good job with the character.
Yeah, and then the little kid, who's an actor we've seen in Fun Size, an equally highbrow film. And basically, the story is that he's going to warm your cockles. This kid's mother is a drug addict, and she's going to jail, so she dumps the kid off with the grandpa to take him to his drug addict criminal father who lives somewhere else, who only wants to take the kid because he'll get money from the government for it. And so, you know, it's heartwarming and classic.
Isn't it?
So that's the storylines. It's weird because you have these little narrative pieces that set up the story when they're by themselves. And then you do these, what I would call candid camera pieces or punked pieces or jackass pieces or whatever, where it's them doing something ridiculous for the benefit of people who, for the benefit of the audience to see the reaction of people who don't know this is a setup.
Right.
So you get a lot of this stuff throughout the movie. And I guess I'll have to say this wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but I still didn't think it was that great because it's that whole, my God, comedy with an ounce of humanity in it would be nice once in a while, wouldn't it? I mean, it gets a little heartwarming toward the end.
I'll agree.
And there's something that is genuinely heartwarming toward the end that made me feel a little bit better about humanity from sitting through this movie because you meet a group of real people who are dedicated to something that you wouldn't think they'd be dedicated to, and they sort of steer the movie in like a hope for humanity direction for a moment, and then they make sure they put a big old brown button on the end of the movie. It's really dark, sick humor for the most part. I mean, I love the candid camera kind of stuff, but most of this isn't like... The joy of candid camera was watching people react to odd situations and see what they do about it. And this is more about putting people in uncomfortable situations. Like there's a situation they do one thing, which is mildly amusing, but the woman who's reacting to it is almost like having a heart attack or like a nervous breakdown on camera. I'm like, well, this isn't, I don't dig laughing at people, personally. So it's one of those things where at times it's marginally amusing, but mostly it's kind of dark and hateful. I'm impressed with the little kid because when it's just Knoxville and this kid in character with no camera crew around them out in public, the kid seemed to be a pretty good little ad-libber. And I don't know if he had like an in-ear prompter or something for this or not. I wanted to do the research to see if he was like a Gary Coleman kind of thing, where he's a little older than he looks.
Okay.
I didn't really laugh during the movie at all, just because it was so cut with being gross or just dark that I didn't dig it that much. But I will say that there was a couple substantially older than me in the theater sitting behind me who were laughing like it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. And if for nothing else, I enjoyed sitting in a comedy these days where somebody was enjoying it that much.
Okay.
Because most comedies I see are pretty weak and there's not a lot of belly laughs. So,
Right.
and I always say that the best place to see a comedy is in a theater with other people, because the overall mood of the crowd is going to lift me up a little bit, even if I'm not having a great time. So I would say if this looks good to you, you'll probably like it, because that trailer does not lie as to the contents. And the stripper thing at the kids' pageant, when I saw that in the trailer, I'm like, that's really sleazy and gross, and doing that in front of kids is not too cool. And the more I thought about it, when you look at pageants, they're really making little girls look older than they should and sexualizing little girls, and it's really disturbing.
Right.
So what this movie did, which in the end I kind of applaud them, they're taking that to the extreme to make a... I would like to think they're taking that to the extreme to make a point.
It's
is
very
if you want to
generous.
sexualize little girls, we're going to do that to the extreme, and maybe you'll look at these things in a different way. So anyway, I've talked more than I ever thought I would about a Jackass production. Over to you.
Went into this, for me, the pinnacle of Jackass was in, I think it was their last just straight out Jackass film, where they were doing a volcano, and it turned out to be that the eruption of the volcano was a guy defecating.
That's
and
classic.
that's just the class that I expect from Jackass. I went into this expecting very, very little, and I got even less. Now, it wasn't the gross out kind of humor.
There was really only one overtly gross, or two in the movie.
There were a couple of strange things, particularly with nudity and frontal nudity and all that kind of stuff. But I wasn't upset with that. And is it fair to expect this from Jackass? Probably not. But my criterion lately for comedy has been cleverness. And you have such a great opportunity. This clearly had a budget behind it. I was impressed with Knoxville. I thought he stayed in character and was good. And the makeup is just unbelievable. But two things really threw me on this. One of them, it's probably not, well, probably both of them, it's not fair to ask this, because I think we're thinking of, or at least I'm thinking of it more from a filmic perspective, knowing how films are made. One was the thing to which you alluded. At least half, probably more, are just the two of them together, driving around in a car or having conversations. And all I'm struck with is your characters. This is so obviously either scripted or impromptu, but it's not part of this overall larger issue where they go out in character and do crazy things to get people.
This movie tries to tell a story and weaves the gags into the story.
Doesn't work for me, because I'm thinking, why are you still performing when there's nobody around for whom you should be performing, except for us, the audience, and we know the trick. So that really threw me. The other thing that threw me, and they have a bit at the very, very end where they show how where all of these cameras are hidden. And the technology was so good. I mean, I hate to say this, but I'm looking at how wide angle it is, and it feels like they're literally right over their shoulder. And we don't learn how they shot it until the end of the film. So the majority of the film, I'm thinking, there's got to be a camera guy right there. How are these people not seeing this? And that really distracted me.
I'm looking forward to this. Seems weird on video, because I want to hear the commentary and the behind the scenes on how they did it, because I'm watching it too, and I'm like, how many people were in on the joke? The store needed to, the store where they do this grocery store gag needs to know they're coming in so they can plant the cameras, but the employees, don't, and all that kind of stuff. So I would love to hear the inside, how they pulled it all off.
Right. So I think for me, because I was distracted by that, but I don't think I'm the typical audience for that case. I just really was taken out of this entire film and really didn't like it. For me, the jokes that they played on the regular public could have been much, much more clever. This clearly had a budget, and all I was sitting there in the middle of it was thinking, boy, wouldn't it be great if you can bring Alan Funt back or somebody and do like just one where, as you say, we're not laughing at the people, but these funny situations, but they're big budgeters. I don't know what the example would be. But I was overall just really kind of disappointed in the low level to which this stooped and the strange combination of reality and the jokes that went through it. So it just really didn't hit me well. Sorry. Speaking of being hit, and hit pretty hard, you're going to get hit pretty hard when you're hit by the God of Thunder, because he's back. and Thor has to, can you imagine it? Save not only our world, but all worlds in the entire universe with the help of gorgeous Natalie Portman and Dad and everybody up there in Asgard, because Thor is going to have to save ours and the Dark World.
Oh, coming down like a hammer.
Every film's got to have and I don't need to see the God of Thunder throwing off quippy lines and stuff like that. And this is what I see so many of these, not to give away my review of this, but I see so many of these films just, we got to churn this out because Avengers 2 is coming. We got to get it going. And this was just kind of boring. The love of my life, Natalie Portman, not to denigrate my relationship with my wife.
She doesn't watch this show,
yeah,
right?
she doesn't. So sorry, Natalie, but she just can't act anymore. She's just bad. She doesn't have anything to do. But I mean, Tom Hiddleston, who plays Loki, is by far, he steals every single scene because he's got something to do. He's got something to chew on. And this just seemed like a silly reason to have Thor and a bunch of special effects running out there. And ultimately, we get to the, and I know this isn't fair, but they do so much try to tie all these stories together, and once we get to the Avengers, oh, look, everybody's together, and they make little references to their own adventures. Thor's got to save not only our world, but like the other 8 planes of existence, and it's just him. Where are the Avengers? Is all I could think of. I mean, I look over at my 12-year-old, and Walter and I are both going like, where are the Avengers? How come it's just Thor? And I know you can't bring them in.
Well, it's not a big enough threat to bring in the rest of the
yeah, I
team.
guess the entire civilized universe isn't. But this was just kind of slow and boring, and I was sorry to say I found Thor: The Dark World pretty uninvolving.
I have to totally agree with you on that. I saw the first Thor, and I wasn't that impressed with it. And I feel the same way about this film. It's like it's doing your homework for the next Avengers movie.
Yeah.
You sit through the Thor movie because things in the other films are going to tie into this one, so you kind of have to sit through it. I thought it was boring. And for as much destruction and special effects wizardry are in this, I just didn't care. I don't find the movie version of Thor, I never read the comics, I don't find the movie Thor very interesting. I mean, he's got a big hammer, and he can break things, but other than that, I'm not into the whole swords and sorcery and the Lord of the Rings kind of stuff, and this has a lot of that at the beginning where they give you the backstory as to who the bad guy's going to be. And as one of the guys at the theater mentioned, toward the end of the movie, it starts to feel like a Doctor Who episode, modern Doctor Who,
right.
where there's a big threat and there's a lot of things blowing up and everybody's running down a corridor to get away from something and hit a magic button before all of Doomsday happens. And it just wasn't very interesting. Decent effects, well shot. The supporting cast of the scientists, Stellan Skarsgård and Kat Dennings and her intern,
right,
are all kind of idiots, and
yeah,
they just waste time. They're like the character who I hated in the National Treasure movies, the guy who's supposedly a genius
right,
but keeps going, now let me get this straight. The declaration, the fool who has to explain things
right
to the audience. So, this was dull. This was a snoozer. I mean, this was really well attended in the matinee that I went to after having already played for a week.
Sure.
So people are into it, and people who know, if you go, stay to the very, very, very end of the credits. There's a little bit of a teaser scene for another film that's coming out a little way into the credits, and then at the very end, there's another little piece that doesn't really set up the next Avengers so much as continues this movie a little bit. I saw it in 3D because I figure everything's better in 3D, or if the movie is no good, at least it's in 3D. And the 3D really didn't add anything.
No.
I kept kind of trying to refocus my eyes to see if I was missing something.
Right.
And apparently this was a post-conversion job, which I used to be against, but I've seen a lot that are good, but they shouldn't have bothered with this. It's just to get more money out of people.
In the long run, in retrospect, I kept thinking that this suffers from what makes Iron Man so successful. You've got a really clever actor in Robert Downey Jr., and he's really the one who has created the Iron Man franchise, I think. But so much of what makes that film work are the quips that Tony will throw off and Downey Jr. gives to us. And I think they're trying, for me at least, I see them trying to bring that same kind of humor to Thor and these other characters, whereas for me, I think this would have been so much more successful if it had been serious and grim and no pun intended with the Dark World, but dark. And that Thor, felt the angst of having to, they have this subplot going on. Oh, Odin, Dad wants me to take over, and I don't want to be the king. Thank you. Make it really serious, and the onus that is put on Thor to have to defend the universe.
Right.
I think it could have been a lot more successful and really powerfully dramatic. And they go for, and I can't say it because, as you say, there was a huge audience there, and they seem to love it. But the humor is misspent on me.
And not a heck of a lot of Thor in a Thor movie. frankly.
that's true.
For my money, which I didn't pay. But still, speaking of which, we thank our friends at Keene Cinemas for allowing us to see these films and then jaw on and on and on and on to you about them. And once again, whether the Bad Grandpa, awful movie, razor sharp picture and sound in the theater that you used to dread going into. So that was pretty cool. And we then scurry right along to thanking our friends at Video Headquarters, who provided us with the rest of what we're about to talk about.
And it was a busy couple weeks.
It was. And personally, just a small aside, I love Video Headquarters.
I do too.
And that is completely unsolicited.
Isn't it? I find a strange correlation that the more we push and like Video Headquarters, the more we find out that Blockbuster went completely out of business.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
I brought it up, though.
We used to live in a town with two big, if I may say it, big-ass video stores, indie video stores that were huge. And Keene City Video sold out to Blockbuster, and Blockbuster eradicated 90% of the stock of what made them great. And the place was like, what I always loved is you'd go into Blockbuster, and there'd be nobody in there, and you'd go to Headquarters, and it would be hopping. And this was when video stores were more popular. So, Blockbuster's gone, and we're still very, very lucky in this town to have a great video store run by people who know about movies and care about movies, unlike what Blockbuster was. And they have catalog titles. By God, if you want to see a movie that you can't find and it's never been released on DVD, they keep the VHS tape.
You keep up at it, and I'll do the sound effects. Shill, shill,
no,
shill.
I'm not. I mean, I just want to see him stay in business because I want to be able to keep going there. So anyway, they gave us the movies, the first of which is what are you going to do when you're a drug dealer and you need to go to Mexico to get just a whole lot of reefer. You come up with a fake family and you tell everybody who asks, we're the Millers. Okay, I'm going to jump in here. That needs to stop. Somebody who's square in a car moving somewhere, singing along to a song that's not cool anymore, it's not funny. It has not been funny for the last 15 years, and they do it in like every third comedy. Any road movie, somebody has to sing along with
it's on the radio.
Delight or something. It's not funny. Cut it out. Sorry about that,
Tell
guys.
me what you really think
I'm
about
sorry,
this movie,
it annoys me. It's not funny. It's like somebody eating really fast and burping. It doesn't work that way, and it's not funny.
We had that in,
what did you think of We're the Millers?
What did I think of We're the Millers? Well, strangely enough, I realized that this was not something for my 12-year-old. So I had to find a time to watch this. But I don't know why. And
you watched it with your Bible study group instead?
No, but I watched it with my wife.
Oh, good.
And she thought it was pretty funny, and I surprisingly thought it was pretty funny. Now, I was bored by and not offended by, but just kind of disgruntled by the low level of the humor. So much of the kind of potty humor, but genitalia and all those kinds of jokes. You didn't need it. And I thought it could have been just as funny and a notch up on the intellectual curve. But I guess you do have to play to the groundlings, as Shakespeare would have said, and throw that kind of stuff in there. So I tried, strangely enough, I looked past that and really sort of found it amusing. You and I were talking off air, and you're right that we start out with, for like the first half hour, 45 minutes, characters you don't like at all, either because they're nasty and unappealing and unkind to each other, or they're such twerps. But, and it is the... So I'm just going to list all of these things that I say are bad about this film, but I ultimately found it amusing. It turns around and it gives you a moral and a message, and can't we all just get along at the end? And that seems so forced. So many of these opportunities where ultimately, and I think you explained this, Jason Sudeikis is in debt to an old friend of his, and he has to go down to Mexico and bring back a little bit of a smidge or a smidge and a half of high-level pot, and it turns out to be 2 metric tons rather. So it's all shoved into this Winnebago, and all of the opportunities that come up that they're just going to get in trouble. Oh, they bleed it, and then it's just the easiest thing in the world. They're at, not to give anything away, but as an example, they're at the crossing between Mexico and the United States, and they've been told, go through this one lane because we paid the guy off. Oops, of course they have to go through the other lane. The guy pulls him over. They're this close to being thrown. I'm going to go in the door, and then, some Mexicans run out from underneath and go running across the border. Go on, folks. Stupid.
Yeah.
So I'll say that so much of this was stupid, so much of this was cookie cutter, but I found it sort of funny. So I'll give it out of 10, I'll give it a 6 for being surprisingly humorous.
Well, good for you. I didn't like it at all. I like Jason Sudeikis. I think mostly he makes movies that aren't good, to me, this being one of them.
Okay.
I think it was just that, it wasn't terribly funny or at all to me. Also, it was that so many comedies are just so like the worldview is so dark and negative, and they lack in humanity these days.
Right.
And as I said off air, I'm not asking for everything to be an Andy Hardy movie here, but it's just like even the stuff that were of our time more, like Animal House, Caddyshack, Blazing Saddles. Those movies were crude and rude and edgy for their day.
Right.
But the people in them at their heart were like good people, and maybe they are in this ultimately. Okay. They turn around and do that. But this is the kind of movie where the only people you meet that have a shred of like decency or morals in the movie are made to be ridiculed and just they're squares and they're idiots, right. And we're going to mock them. So that kind of bugged me. But overall, I just didn't find it funny. And I don't think I need to say much more about it than that.
I can certainly see why.
Having said all that, this movie has been insanely popular, so maybe I'm just weird.
That could be it.
It's entirely possible.
That could be the answer. I don't know.
Up next
we're two different kinds of guys, I would think, is the case may be. And speaking of two different kinds of guys, how'd you like that?
Oh, we wanted to quickly insert something.
Yes.
Can I say that before 10 o'clock?
Well,
also out this week, we're not going to play a clip for it.
That's true.
But they gave it to us. So
we were getting there.
Disney's Planes, which is the, not sequel, a spin-off from the Cars series, which is all about planes and their adventures. And they're voiced by a cast of celebrities, and neither of us had the opportunity to watch that film, but it's on video this week. So you were saying?
And there goes my segue. Thank you very much. But Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg are both, they're kind of on the same team, but if these two guys are on the same team, they're about as diametrically opposed as could be, as they're trying to stop drug runners and make ends meet. And all they have are their wits and two guns. So Denzel Washington is unquestionably one of my favorite actors of all time. He can just stand there, and I'll pay to watch him. Wahlberg's been in a couple of things lately, particularly the other guys, that I just thought were hilarious. So I was so excited to see this coming up. Wow, get these two guys together, just watch them play off of each other. And for me, the chemistry, as we'll say, just wasn't there. It was kind of a convoluted storyline. Wahlberg works for one government organization, and there are bad guys there. Washington works for another. So they really can't work together, but they have to. Edward James Olmos is kind of fun in a bit of a cameo as the ultimate bad guy, drug dealer guy. And it's got lots of action, but it just doesn't, for some reason, it just doesn't come together for me. And I think it was that, I don't know if this film was written before you knew that you had the two of them on there, but the kind of play back and forth just didn't work for me. And so I was slightly disappointed, I'll say, in Two Guns.
I guess I would say the same thing. This is okay. This isn't bad. This isn't anything anybody's going to remember down the line.
Right.
This is one of those movies down the line. If anybody looks back at older movies on video, they're going to go, "Oh, those two guys were in a movie together."
Yeah.
It's far twistier. I was disappointed in the trailer when it came out in the theater because I thought, "Oh, great, you blew the surprise that where their allegiances lie."
Right.
But the truth is, this movie has a lot more twists in it than the trailer gives away, which was cool. So I didn't quite expect where it was going to go while I was watching it. So that was fun. It's a good guy movie. It's a lot of cussing, a lot of shooting, a lot of fighting. Stuff blows up, hot cars, chicks, loud music on occasion. So I would say this is a solid rental. This isn't something you want to buy, but this is a fun movie. If you want to rent a movie, have a decent time for an hour and a half, and then return it and not think about it probably ever again for the rest of your life. Which sounds more negative than it is, but this and it's the next thing we're going to talk about, I think, qualifies as just a fun rental.
Right.
So it's not great, but it's a decent rock'em sock'em, rough and tumble kind of thing.
Okay.
So speaking of sock'em, up next. So this is the way I want to describe this one. Okay. Commissioner Gordon and Dr. Doom blackmail Thor's younger brother into spying on Han Solo. It's a tale of industrial espionage starring Liam Hemsworth. It's Paranoia. So,
yes,
I knew nothing about this going in, and I intentionally did not look at the back of the box. I just saw the names, and I'm like, the spider sense started tingling because I'm like, wow, there's some big ass names in this movie, and I've never heard of it.
Okay.
So that always makes me worry, but ultimately, I thought this was kind of interesting. It's a film about industrial espionage, which you don't see movies about that so much. It reminded me of other things I've seen before, but I couldn't tell you what. I want to say The Firm, but I don't remember The Firm enough to say that it's The Firm.
It has a lot of The Firm going.
So basically, Hemsworth works at Oldman's company, gets fired, gets called back and says, okay, here's the deal. We're going to pay you to spy on Harrison Ford's company because Oldman and Ford used to be friends way back and steal his secrets so that we can copy his technology. But then it gets a little more complicated toward the end from that. So a lot of it is, the film is somebody trying to maintain their cover, which I thought was kind of cool. It's well made. It's moves along at a pretty good pace, and the people in it are good for the most part. So I don't have a lot to say about Paranoia other than it was fairly intelligent and it held my interest the whole time, and I was surprised. And you'd said that it actually did get a pretty limited, I guess,
it was pretty
release. So this is, as with the last film, I would say this is a decent rental. If you like anybody who's in this, if you want to just make goo-goo eyes over Liam Hemsworth, fine. I think he takes his shirt off at one point for the ladies. And it's a decent, zippy little thriller.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that. It looks really good. You've got a lot of performances in it. We talked several weeks ago about when did Harrison Ford stop being able to act. He's okay in this.
Yeah, he's better in
in
this
It's
than he has
very
been.
limited. Oldman is in it a good deal more than Ford, and he starts chewing the scenery every now and then in very Shatner-esque fashion, I think. But ultimately, my concerns with this, and the moment it started up, I'm pretty familiar with The Firm. It's one of my favorite Grisham stories, and I still think it's a good film. It's got a lot of The Firm, but that's 20 years ago. So you can update it, you can modernize it a little bit. I had trouble with the fact that Hemsworth's character is basically he pays verbal homage to the fact that he's got to take care of his dad, ailing Richard Dreyfuss, whom, Richard Dreyfuss getting a job these days is kind of hard to believe. He's in it very little. But he says that, but then he's just nasty to him. He's all out for himself. He even says so much at the point, and I thought maybe this was really aiming at, to kids these days.
Well, these kids today.
Yeah.
With the tight pants and the
Hemsworth
hot
says,
rods.
I've worked hard and I went to school and everything. I'm due. It's time for me to have lots of money. Give me a break. So I'm immediately starting off with kind of thinking, this guy just wants stuff handed to him. And then I was struck with also the feeling that, and it's funny that Harrison Ford is in this, because I said this exact same thing about Harrison Ford in Firewall. Firewall was about this guy who knew computers left and right, and I never once in my life believed Harrison Ford understood a word that was coming out of his mouth. And I just cannot buy that Liam Hemsworth knows anything about this technology. So casting-wise, I had to fall back, and I did enjoy it. It's good-looking, and it follows the same model, so I think people will enjoy it if you even like what the trailer shows you. But I just kind of had to fall back and just kind of accept that, okay, tell me this little silly little story with maybe a little bit better casting, maybe a little bit more attention to the script. This could have been a really good espionage thriller. But I still think, as you say, it's a fun rental.
Yeah, it's a decent time waster, as they say,
Yes.
in a good way. So the next film, I didn't see, so you can talk about it.
I asked specifically for this because I happen to like these guys. From the creators of Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz comes sort of the completion of their trilogy. They're not really tied together, but you get a bunch of English guys together as high schoolers, and their big idea is to go and do the 12 pub. It's hard to say. 12 pub crawl, where all in one night you go to 12 different pubs around their English area, and you drink a pint at each one. But they just weren't able to make it all this one time. Things happen, and you grow up, and but isn't this something that you really want to do? You want to go back, and you don't want to have any loose ends that you have to tie up. So Simon Pegg gets all of his buddies back together from all across the English countryside, and they all come back to their hometown one last time for a 12-pub crawl. But they find that the place has kind of changed and has been taken over by aliens. And what they're doing is they're really at the world's end.
Gag that's right out of Hot Fuzz, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, in every film they do that. So
Okay.
they have one of those going. So this is a very kind of wink sort of a thing. I don't know necessarily why. And I think it's the strength of the personalities. But I could probably just as easily point a finger at this one like I do with the Adam Sandler films and say, oh, look, it's just a bunch of those guys. This is the film they're making this weekend.
Right.
But it's clearly got a huge budget. It looks great. Pierce Brosnan, it's got a lot of stars. Laura Linney, it's got a lot of stars that we've seen before that are just kind of jumping in. And there's something behind this that just makes it seem like these guys were having so much fun making it that it comes across. It's certainly got a through line. Everybody could see that these guys, and it's about growing up and not having regrets, or having regrets and trying to fix that. But it just falls on the strengths of the characters with Simon Pegg and Martin Freeman and all those guys. If you like Hot Fuzz, if you like Shaun of the Dead, you had mentioned off air that it's basically Shaun of the Dead again, only you replace it with...
Not having seen it, it looks like it's Shaun of the Dead, but it's aliens instead of zombies.
It's aliens instead of zombies, and very much kind of the same thing. But it's really the interaction of these 5 guys, and if you like them, I think you're going to have a lot of fun. Very clever. I mean, they don't cut, and it's not like an American film where you say a funny line, and then if you're the only one watching it, there's this dead space for 10 seconds so the audience can laugh.
Yeah.
They don't even worry about that. Boom, 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 boom. They're going along. So extremely clever script. Performances are great fun. It's clearly got a huge budget, so I really enjoyed The World's End.
I really want to see this because I like these guys. I actually
you should.
saw Simon Pegg and Nick Frost in person. They did a sneak preview at the Brattle Theater in Boston of Hot Fuzz. It was part of a film festival they were doing at the time.
Cool.
So they came out and they did a Q&A, and the Brattle is back projects their screen, so during the credits they got in front between the projector and the screen and they were dancing, and it's like a Bond film with these guys. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to this, so I probably will actually pay my hard-earned money to rent this in a week or so. Speaking of things I didn't pay anything to see, up next is an art house film, very different kind of film. You have Paul Rudd, you have, oh boy, I'm blanking on his name. Oh, we'll edit all this out later. Paul Rudd and Emil Hirsch as 2 guys painting lines in the middle of the road in a place that had a forest fire. Seriously, that's what it's about. It's called Prince Avalanche, and here's the trailer. So this is kind of a weird one.
Yes.
It's with Paul Rudd in it, you want to think this is going to be a comedy.
Right.
But it's really kind of not a comedy. The Emil Hirsch character is kind of a doofus, so it's kind of light because he's kind of lightheaded, as it were. It's odd. It's really beautifully shot. It's shot where there actually was a forest fire, so you get these sweeping vistas and this weird kind of alien, dreamy, nightmare-y landscape with these guys just having these conversations while they paint lines in the road. And Paul Rudd's character is the boyfriend of Emil Hirsch's sister.
Okay.
And that's sort of how they're connected. And he basically got this doofus a job for the summer painting lines. And you don't really see much in the way of anybody else in the movie.
Right,
You see Lance Legault, who I was very happy to see, who people may remember my age. He was the colonel on the A-Team who was chasing after the A-Team. And he has a great voice. You hear his voice if you've ever heard him narrate anything, you know.
Yeah, you
he
can.
actually narrates the audio tour of Graceland if you go to visit Elvis's house. It's, hello, I'm Lance Legault. And like, he named himself. He name-checked himself. It was great. So it was cool to see him again. But ultimately, to me, this is like one of those, what I call, in a bad way, a slice of life movie.
Right.
Where you're just spending a little time with these guys doing their thing, and then it kind of ends, and you're like, what? There's no point to that. Movies like this can work if the dialogue is really well done or if the conversations are really interesting. And to me, they really kind of weren't. I was with it up to a point because it was kind of neat. You're with these 2 guys doing their thing in this space, and it kind of feels like you're there after a while. And I like movies that are able, especially at home, to make me kind of feel like I'm with the characters in that space.
Right.
But after a while, I'm like, this isn't going anywhere. This is just a lot of repetition of the same stuff over and over again. And it's just kind of goofy.
Right.
So I think if you're okay with, if you like the people in it, that's a big leg up. And if you are okay with films that just kind of walk in a circle for a while and contemplate their shoes, you might like it. But for me, it was just kind of boring.
This had a couple of things going against it for me. As soon as I see the Palme d'Or logo, I'm like,
You're an anti-Sundance person.
It's just like, this meaningful film. And I've been wondering, I like Paul Rudd. I'm growing to like him, but is he strong enough to helm a film? Particularly either a full comedy or a full drama, which this isn't either. I was a little uncomfortable with the way they portrayed Emil Hirsch. They didn't quite make him like, you know, a completely retarded doofus guy, but he was just kind of, everything in this is broad strokes.
Yeah.
And you're right exactly about a film like this has to either have gripping characters or gripping discussion, and after a while, as you say, it really showed that it had neither. And I thought this could have done with being, it's not terribly long as it is, but I thought it was still too long. Right. Ending it sooner, there wasn't enough to go, and I think the filmmakers didn't really know where to go with it or how to end it. So in the long run, for the majority of it, I thought it was interesting enough. You're right that some of the scenery and the landscaping is just kind of really stunning to look at. But after that, and you start focusing in on these characters and what they're talking about, there's not really a whole lot there. And I think your term, appropriately in a negative sense, is a slice of life. Why did I watch this film at the end? If you like the characters, and I think it's worth. I think I could recommend it if you've got a couple of hours, for want of a better term, to burn.
And all of your socks have been folded and sorted.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, everything else is done.
So speaking of strange barren landscapes.
Strange barren landscapes, you can create some, as the case may be. But once again, as is our want in explaining things, what are you going to do when you're the last survivor of your planet and you're shot off to another alien place and you've got to defend it, but you happen to be super strong and you can see lots of things and you can fly around as a result of the yellow sun? Well, you can turn into the Man of Steel. As I recall, we were both overwhelmingly happy when this finally came out because we wouldn't have to see the trailer.
The trailer played for months and months and months in front of everything we saw at Keene Cinemas. I didn't much like this movie.
I'll agree.
And partially because probably I'm a huge fan. I grew up with the Christopher Reeve, the first two at least that were good, Superman movies, where Superman was a beacon of hope and happiness and somebody you looked up to in all this. And this is the Chris Nolan version. Almost literally, he produced it. This is the Dark Knight version of Batman, of Superman, where it's all dark and brooding, and he has daddy issues, and he doesn't know where his place is in the world, and all the imagery is dark, and they've toned down the colors of his costume, so they just put him in black leather and be done with it. So I went to see this in the theater with my parents and Cricket, so damn near the whole family, minus my sister was there. My father has followed Superman since the 30s because he's older than I am. Funny how that works out. And he thought it was cool. He liked it.
Okay.
And my mother thought it was okay. I was okay with it, but upon reflection, I don't really want to watch this movie again.
Right.
And I actually didn't for this show. I fast-forwarded through it to remind me what I didn't like about it. It's way too busy. It's basically, again, we're rebooting Superman. So, you've got a blank slate. You can do anything you want. You have 60 years or 70 years of comics history. What are you going to do? Well, we're going to remake Superman 2 again. So basically, this is Superman 1 and 2 that we grew up with, redone with a dark, gritty edge with a lot of CG and stuff. So the story basically is, I did like the fact that you don't get the entire origin story again. It's mostly told in flashbacks. So it sort of hits the ground running, which is cool because, again, 70-something years of history, you don't really need to go over that again with people.
Right. And how many times have we been told it?
Exactly, we know it. So this was cool that they didn't waste time on that, and it's still a long movie. So you do get the whole destruction of Krypton and Jor-El sending his only son to save humanity and all that stuff. And the destruction of Krypton is almost comically overdone. It's like flying dragons and lasers, and there's so much going on. You're just like, whoa, a little explosion would have been fine.
Right.
So then you have the supervillains, General Zod and his minions, come to Earth and they duke it out. And my beef with this, the action sequences were all really hard to make out. It's like they were paid by the particle of debris falling in every scene. And the people, they're blessed with super speed, these heroes. But the way it's done, it looks like you're watching somebody playing a video game where things are just going, and I'm like, what? I can't focus on any of this.
Right.
Henry Cavill, I thought, was fine as Superman. As much as I kind of had a little bit of a beef with, every major American superhero being played by a British guy now. I'm open to him in more movies. I hope this was them getting all that out of their system so they can just focus on making better, maybe more happy, hopeful Superman movies, because this is really kind of sour and brooding, and there's no wonder in this movie. It's all just kind of dark. People are going to rent this no matter what we say, but I would highly encourage them to check out the first two Superman movies because those are the movies that made this a hero for a new generation, and I don't know that Man of Steel is going to do that for the kids right now.
Right. I think Cavill was fine as well. I agree, basically, as you said, with everything that you said. I happen to not only kind of grow up on the other side of the Marvel spectrum, but everybody read Batman, everybody read Superman as comic books. I used to work for the company, so know the character really well, and at least at the time I was working for them. Superman was there's one good thing and one bad thing about Superman. The bad thing was that he's basically all powerful. John Byrne eventually came along and toned him down so we could have more of a threat because that's where the interest is in conflict. But Superman was always the beacon of hope, of goodness, and while that might get a little tiring, that's what Superman always meant to me as a comic book reader and as an editor of the comics and things like that. And so I was disappointed in that respect. We do get back to the brooding Peter Parker kind of character and that's what makes Spider-Man interesting was the humanity of it. But this one we spent so much time with a strange Lois Lane. I mean, I like the actress a lot, but this just seemed to be all over the place. It felt like they were trying to say so much I don't need to see, as you say, all the silly stuff that's going on in Krypton. Get him here and move on with the story. And so I think ultimately, I had internal logic with this. General Zod brings his ship, which is from Krypton, back, and so they're flying around, and Superman uses his heat vision to break up the thing. Well, if General Zod's ship is from Krypton, isn't it indestructible? I don't know. So anyway, and that's just me as both a filmmaker and an editor over-analyzing this film. But it isn't fun. I don't think people are going to enjoy it so much. So I hope that they take this and do some more with it in bringing some sequels, because I would be happy to see the sequels.
Oh, yeah.
This one, just as a reboot, I was a little disappointed in it as well. I sound like such a grumpy Gus throughout this entire show. But I love The World's End.
Cool. So with that, we're rapidly approaching the end of the program.
We are, and then we still had one more.
We did a movie called Turbo. We're not going to show a clip or anything. A CG animated film about a snail who gets supercharged in races in Formula One. I didn't
Forced over by Green Lantern.
Yeah, it's funny
By
enough.
that matter.
It's all connected. I didn't enjoy it that much in the theater, but if you are a family or a person who is into Formula One, this movie is like a love letter to that.
Right.
It's really detailed. So once Rush comes out, that would actually be a pretty cool double feature, because Rush is a great movie about Formula One. So Turbo is out there. It's inoffensive if you're into that sort of thing. And with that, we will bid you a fond adieu.
Until next week.
Until next week. I'm Mark.
I'm Tom.
And we're the
Cinemaniacs.
Bum 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 bum